Hello, welcome to Locked on Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite team in the Bay Area. On today's episode, our Bald King returns as we profile Dmitri Simashev, a Russian defender, and really intriguing prospect, especially if you like your defenders who play defense. So all that and more on today's episode of Locked on Sharks.
You're Locked on Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm your host, JD Young, contributor at San Jose Hockey Now. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly a part of the Locked On Network, where we cover your team every day. You can, of course, follow the show wherever you get podcasts, and, of course, subscribe on YouTube as well, where the episodes come out first. So we are going to be joined here in a second by our Bald King, Tony Ferrari of the Hockey News, where we break down Dmitri Simashev and why he feels like a steal at the end of the first round, especially if you like your defenders who play defense, and a guy who the point totals aren't quite there right now, but there's some context to why that might be and why it might just be kind of scratching the surface on his offensive game. So before we are joined by our good friend Tony, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you guys by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And now we bring in our Bald King, Tony Ferrari of the Hockey News. Tony, how's it going, buddy?
I'm good. I didn't just watch the Leafs lose in game 1 to the Florida Panthers, and I feel chipper.
This podcast is going to be really short because Tony's just going to be like, nothing matters. Who cares? The draft is dumb. Hockey's dumb. Go do something else with your life.
Yeah.
1000%. So we're going to talk about Dmitri Simashev, who is a very interesting prospect from Russia. If you're don't know who he is, he's a defenseman playing with the Loco in the MHL. Sorry, he's 6'4", 201, and you know that you can't teach size, Tony. In 29 games, he had 1 goal, 9 assists with 47 shots on goal. He also did get about 10 games in 18 games, in the KHL. Didn't register any points, but you very rarely see a 17, 18-year-old kid playing in the KHL. So let's start there by talking about what makes Dmitri Simashev such an intriguing prospect.
He has just about every tool you could want in a prospect. I think that's the big thing with him. He's an excellent skater. He has obviously great size at 6'4", 200 pounds. He's still got to fill out his frame a little bit, so he'll become even stockier, even stronger. But the big thing with Simashev that I've noticed is while his defensive game is extremely refined, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute, he has these flashes of offensive potential where you're like, this is a guy that should have far more points than he does currently. Even in the MHL, he's not a guy that's putting up a ton of points, just 10 points in 29 games, and then 2 in 4 games with Loco 76. This is a guy that I think could realistically be a very good two-way defenseman, a guy that maybe isn't the offensive dynamo, but he has the skill to do it every once in a while, kind of similar to a Matthias Ekholm, a guy that plays both ways, is known for his defensive prowess, but every once in a while pops out one of those offensive plays where you're like, where'd that come from? And you just kind of know that this guy's got the whole package with him. Unfortunately, playing in Russia, he's going to get knocked for that. He's going to get knocked for the lack of production. He's going to get knocked for just being a little bit relatively unknown, especially with playing 18 games at the KHL level, getting no points there. But he's a guy that held his own at the KHL level. I thought he was really good in a system that wasn't really conducive to offense either. So that's the other thing, is he was a guy that was really mobile along the blue line, east-west, would come down into the point, be wide open for a shot in the slot, and the pass would never come. The pass, he'd kind of create all these chances and nothing would come of it. And it was kind of frustrating to watch at times because you're like, you're yelling at your screen. You're like, he's wide open. He's got his stick 15 feet in the air because he's 6'4", and he's just waiting for the pass. Just give it to him, and he's going to bomb it on net because he's got a good shot too. So this is a guy that I think is going to get really underrated. I know a lot of people have been looking for the next Moritz Seider, and while obviously that's such a crazy thing to look for in the draft, a lot of people have kind of given David Reinbacher that title. I don't think it's David Reinbacher. I think the underrated defenseman this year is Dmitri Simashev.
So, I mean, you know me, I am a defenses for nerds, go score a ton of points. And, you know, I like my defenseman to be more offensive because I think, you know, you can, a defensive defenseman, like at some point, right, you're going to give up a goal. But like you said, Simashev seems like a great two-way player who can play. I don't know if it's a complete shutdown, but he's going to be a plus defenseman. And then if you get anything offensively from him, it sounds like this might be a really steal at the end of the first round, beginning second round is where he's kind of being projected to go. I think I know you have him projected in like 15th, but, you know, looking at our Lord and Master Bob McKenzie's got him around 35 right now. Like you see kind of, you know, him all over the place. So is that basically just because of the Russian factor, or why do you think he's such a high variance of it with his ranking?
I think part of it's the Russian factor, and I think part of it's just the lack of production. At the end of the day, this is a guy who's playing in a very lackluster offensive system. He's a guy that is relied on extremely defensively, especially at the KHL level. He was kind of looked at, and it seems like he was told, play that defensive game, play stout back there, and create chances in that way. And I think when he gets into an NHL system or a North American system in general, that's a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more up tempo, he's going to be able to kind of turn those breakout passes that he's so good at into offensive chances. He's going to be able to find spots where he's already jumping into the play in certain areas. He's going to be able to do it a little bit more consistently, use that skating, but he's a very fluid skater for 6'4", a guy that I think it can fly up the wing if you want him to be that backside defender that activates. There's a lot to like in his game. And like I said, the offensive points aren't there, but I think they will come over time, especially once he gets to the next level and he starts coming to the North American game where we breed a little bit more offense systemically in North America.
All right. So you talked about his offense and how you think there's a lot more there. Defensively, right? You talked about he's kind of a plus defender. Like, what makes him such a good defender? Is it more the system, or is it just because he's 6'4" and can move like the wind? It seems like.
Yeah, it's the movement, the ability that he has to close in on guys. He has the physicality to be a guy that blows up guys at the blue line. He's able to close in on guys along the boards, win those battles with strength. But I think the big thing that makes Simashev a really interesting defender is the fact that he plays the defensive game in a modern way, leading with the stick, establishing body position more often than not, and trying to take the puck away rather than take the man away from the puck. And while you have to kind of do both at times, it's so much more conducive to creating offense and moving the puck up the ice in a positive direction for yourself. When you're stripping the man of the puck and then you have the puck on your stick and you have the ice open to yourself while that guy's either blowing by you, trying to catch a quick turn or whatever it may be, he's got the ability to kind of strip that puck and start moving it quickly. He can blow a guy up. I've seen him do it a number of times. He'll defend the front of the net pretty well as well. He shuts down cycles on the board. He does a lot of everything in a defenseman, and that's why I think on certain people's boards he is so high up there. I know he's the second defender on my board right now. He's the second or third on quite a few of the public boards. Like you said, it's going to be interesting kind of where he goes because people like Bob McKenzie who pull NHL scouts, they have him a little bit lower. But I've talked to other people as well within the NHL teams that they have him a little bit higher as well. So this is going to be a really interesting player at the end of the day. I think the Russian factor is obviously going to play a thing, but man, I won't be shocked if some team does get bold and takes them inside the top 15, and if not inside the top 10 even.
All right, guys, before we continue talking about Simashev, we compare Simashev to Mukhamadullin, why they kind of feel like completely different players. And Simashev feels like a much, much safer pick than Mukhamadullin, who has a much, much higher upside than Mukhamadullin. So before we do that, do need to take a quick break, talk to you guys about our friends over at Game Time. It's summertime coming up. You want to go get some new tickets for games. Of course, you have the Giants, you have the A's, you have Warriors playoff basketball right now, plenty of concerts happening this summer. but you know how much of a struggle and stress buying tickets can be. That's where Game Time comes in. It's a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theaters near you. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Great thing, they have the views for all your seats, because there's nothing worse than buying a seat and then getting there and realizing you have a terrible view. Also, if you don't like to plan things, you just want to get tickets right away, they have exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And you always get the best price. If you find a ticket in the same section, the same row for less, you'll get a credit of 110% off the difference. So snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. You know, with the top defenseman, right, there's, you know, like you said, Rickenbacker, you have ASP, but there's not like a clear-cut top 10 defender. Like those guys might sneak into the top 10. It feels a very, very forward class this year. Yeah. So, I mean, it does kind of feel like you couldn't get a potential steal at the back end of the first round with one of these defensemen. And Simashev feels like he could be one of those guys, right?
Yeah, if he's the guy that falls into the 20s, whoever ends up taking him there could get a really valuable player. I think I know the Sharks fans are obviously fairly familiar with Shakir Mukhamadullin now.
Oh, we will get on that in a second here. So yes,
the former Devils prospect, Devils first round pick, 20th overall, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of people are comparing him to Simashev. Mm-hmm. I think the big thing is Mukhamadullin had a lot of decision making issues. He has the physical tools, but there's a lot of things up top that are a little bit questionable at times. With Simashev, I think those things are refined. I think that's the big difference. And whereas you're getting a guy that you're hoping to mold into something pretty great with Mukhamadullin, I think you're getting a guy that's already something pretty great that you're hoping to kind of light a fire under and get going a little bit to try to create that offensive game a little bit more and generate a little bit more up ice. But he has all the tools to do it. He shows signs of doing it. There's these little flashes of play where, like I said, you're going, man, this kid, if he takes that step and just activates a little bit more and gets a little bit more aggressive with the puck, he's going to be a really fun player. And like you said, in a defensive class where Ryan Bacher's up there, ASP's up there, people may look at guys like Luca Cagnoni and Etienne Morin as like maybe dark horses to go in the first round. In my opinion, I don't think there's a safer defender that you can take than a guy like Dmitri Simashev.
I mean, so you kind of jumped into my next question, which was going to be, we already have a big left-handed Russian defenseman at home. Why are we buying another one at the, can we get McDonald's and then we have food at home type of question. So yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it already, but like, Mukhamadullin, who I think a lot of people kind of maybe saw as a bit of a reach, I think, if I remember correctly, when the Devils picked him. But, it seems like Mukhamadulin's got a lot of tools, but still trying to kind of figure out the toolbox, while Simashev feels a steady, kind of a stronger foundation, especially where they're at with their draft process during their draft cycles.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much exactly it. I think with Mukhamadullin, you're looking at him and you go, if we get a second pair guy, that's awesome, but we probably get a third pair guy out of him with the skill set he has, just the raw tools he has. With Simashev, I think you go, we're probably getting a second pair guy. Can he be that defensive presence on a top pair? Like Matthias Ekholm was a guy that didn't get the love that he should deserve for a long, long time. Now that he's on Edmonton, he's getting a little bit of it, a little bit more. And he's always been a guy that people are like, oh yeah, Matthias Ekholm, he's so good. He's so good. But there's always been Roman Josi. There's always been Shea Weber or Ryan Suter. A guy like Dmitri Simashev could probably fill that role on a team like the Sharks, where you have a guy like Erik Karlsson and maybe he gets moved and you have other guys that are on this team. Dmitri Simashev could be that unheralded guy that helps lead the team to a long playoff run. So
I know Mike Grier's done a kind of a lot of work in a short amount of time to try to retool this blue line, right? Acquiring Henry Thrun, acquiring Mukhamadullin. Where would you kind of put, I know you're not the biggest Sharks prospect guy, but where would you kind of put, if the Sharks did draft Simashev, where would you put him among the blue line prospects?
I'd put him right up there, honestly, near the top. I think they've got a lot of really
A lot of
good
third pairing.
prospects.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Like that's just it. Like the Sharks have got a lot of really good defensive prospects, but they don't have like a guy.
That
And I
crown
think
jewel.
Dmitri Simashev could be the guy. Matthias Havlin could be a really fun player. I think a guy like Knaziev, really awesome player. I love his game. I think there's a lot to develop there, but it's going to be a little bit of slow burn, and he probably tops out as a second pair guy if everything works out. Henry Thrun, pretty solid dude, but again, you're looking at a guy that's not really going to take that step and be that first line guy. Mukhamadullin, I talked about him already.
Yeah.
You're probably going to get an NHL defender, but how high of a ceiling are you going to get? Because you can't really figure out the toolbox, and he's got some runway to go. I think Simashev would instantly, in my opinion at least, probably jump to the top of the defensive pipeline for the Sharks. In looking at their prospect pool as a whole, he probably jumps right up there with guys like Bystedt and William Eklund and Bordeleau and Gushin. So it's going to be a really nice addition if this is the guy that the Sharks wind up getting. But there's a lot of variance with where Simashev could get drafted, like we mentioned. I wouldn't be shocked to see him go in the first round. I wouldn't be shocked to see him go early in the second round. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes.
All right. So of course, with the Russian thing, I think his contract right now is through 24-25, where he's going to be in Russia for the next, 2 seasons at least. And then you're probably at least a year in the AHL, probably maybe 2 years to get used to the North American ice. What is that kind of the timeline you're picturing with him?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because it's going to take a while to get kind of acclimated to the North American ice. I think he has the speed and the skating ability to do it. I'm just looking at a consolidated ranking that Prashant Iyer put together that kind of tracks the draft rankings of different players, and you're starting to see Simashev's average ranking move up as the year has gone on, and that's going to be the interesting thing. He's a guy that was ranked in the late to early 20s from a lot of the year, kind of started to dip down towards the new year just because people weren't seeing his game, and recently he's shot up, and now his average rank sitting just inside the top 20. So I think that's kind of where you can expect his name to start coming up. Realistically, I think he probably ends up going towards the end of the first round, and some team's probably going to get a steal around there. And
the Sharks do have that Devils pick right now, which is right in that range. So so a couple years before, feels like whoever is going to get him is going to be super, super happy with Simashev. In a couple years, like you're getting a potential steal at the back end of the first round for a defenseman who can actually play defense. And then if he figures out his offensive game, and from what you said, it sounds more like the tools are there and he's just not in the right environment for it. So if he gets some better teammates, you might really kind of a year from now or 2 years from now feel much, much better about him coming when he makes his transition to North America, right?
Yeah, I think that's just it. I think you look at the Carolina Hurricanes prospect, Alexander Nikishin. He's a little bit of the opposite. He's a guy that's a very defensive first defenseman, a guy that is going to be a good defensive player in the NHL, but he's been put in this offensive environment where he's been kind of pushed, hey, shoot the puck, get into the offensive zone, activate, be this guy that makes the passes and creates offense, and he's playing with a really good team as well. So when you're put in that environment, you're able to kind of create more. And when Nikishin comes over to the NHL, I don't think he's going to be this offensive dynamo. I think he's going to be a guy that is defense first with a little bit of offense thrown in. I think Simashev's kind of in that same mold where that's kind of the base that you're getting with Simashev, but I think he has the tools to actually be an offensive contributor. And if he was in a situation like Alexander Nikishin, he's probably going to put up even more points than what Nikishin has done this year. And Nikishin, if I'm not mistaken, set the under 21 record in the KHL this year. So I think Simashev's got that kind of potential, if not more.
All right, before we finish up with Tony, we talk about the U18s and which players kind of really solidified their stock, which players maybe hurt their stock a little bit. We talk about Otto Stenberg, who I just had a profile on with Patrick last week. So we talk about him. We talk about the USA guys and kind of where they're kind of at. Do want to let you guys know, of course, how you can become an everydayer just by downloading and listening to Locked On Sharks every day. Tomorrow, we're going to be discussing everybody's favorite fast guy on the Sharks, Noah Gregor, and why this is a hot seat season for him, why he should be feeling a little bit uncomfortable this offseason. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And, of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right, let's transition to some kind of different draft talk. So the under 18s just finished up. Go USA. Who there was a lot of the kind of first round guys playing in here. Which guy do you think helped his draft stock the most? Let's start with that.
The most, it's tough because I think you have guys like Juraj Pekarisic, who played for Slovakia, who was a very good player, and I think it wasn't really in the mindset of a lot of teams and in analysts, but he played his way into that, and I think now he's a guy that people are considering the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, middle of the draft. But in terms of solidifying where he should go, in my opinion, I think Otto Stenberg is that guy. He absolutely tore up the world under 18s, was a fantastic offensive catalyst for the Swedes, led them to an undefeated record up until that gold medal game against the Americans, and helped get them to a lead in that game. I think he was absolutely fantastic. He tore up the Canadians. He had 9 points in the 2 games against the Canadian team, and that just goes to show how terrible the Canadians were at this tournament, and partially, but also, Stenberg tied William Nylander's record for most points by a Swedish player at this tournament. He's a guy that was the top scoring non-American. He absolutely did everything possible. And his defensive game was really good in this tournament too. I think that's the underrated part that doesn't get talked about. He was very good at just being in the right spot, intercepting passes, knocking down pucks, and creating from that back end. Transitionally, he's a fantastic player. This is a guy that's creative, attacks offensively, and he's got some bravado to him. He's got some oomph where he's going to go in there, he's going to score a goal and then get in your face and laugh at you. He's got that little flair in his game. So I think that combined with some of the offensive skill that he showed, I think he's boosted his draft stock and kind of solidified himself as a guy that's going to be considered in the top 20.
All right. And then, of course, we have the Americans, right? You have Leonard, you have Gabe Perreault, and then you have Will Smith. Leonard and Will Smith, both going to be top 10, potentially top 5 picks. And then Gabe Perreault, who, spoiler, we're going to have discussing next week. Where, he's been kind of a guy who's been looked at the back end, and could he be kind of working his way up into the middle of the first round?
Yeah, I think this tournament has helped solidify himself as a first-round pick. I think he's right at that back end for me. He's a guy that I think has some pace issues. He's a very good play connector. The way I look at him is he's an elite complementary player. If you ask him to drive a line, if he's the best player in a line, you're going to have issues. I think that's the big thing is you can't ask this guy to be the guy on a line. But if you're asking him to play with a guy like Will Smith and Ryan Leonard, and be that kind of connecting piece, then you're going to get a lot of production out of this guy. I think he's very good in the offensive zone. He's got a good shot. He's able to make pretty solid passes in the offensive zone. In transition, he's a very good bumper. I don't think he's a guy that's going to ever carry the puck through the neutral zone with a high level efficiency, but he's going to be in the neutral zone. And if a guy like Will Smith is flying up the middle, a defender closes in on him, Gabe Perreault is going to be in perfect position to kind of get that pass and do the give and go. And I think he gets a lot of points and does a lot of things offensively because he is so smart and he knows where to be in the offensive zone. If he can get his skating up, I think that's where you get a really good player. I think you look at him and Andrew Cristall, they had very different tournaments, but very similar issues in terms of tool sets. And I think that's a big thing is when you looked at Cristall's tournament, he wasn't really put with guys to succeed. He wasn't really put in position to succeed. And you notice those skating issues. You notice the separation issues and the ability to kind of have to try to drive things in the offensive zone while not really being able to be the guy to drive things. I think he's a very high-end complementary player. Whereas with Gabe Perreault, you had those high-end teammates, those high-end line mates to kind of fill in the gaps where Perreault's game isn't quite efficient at. So it was really interesting to see his tournament, and he absolutely was fantastic. That entire top line was fantastic, if I'm being completely honest. And Perreault obviously passed Austin Matthews' record for the NTDP. Austin Matthews was almost a year younger. I'd just like to point that out. So, just for people to not get so over it.
Why is everything about the Leafs, Tony?
Will Smith too. I love Will Smith, and I think he's a fantastic player. But he also passed Austin Matthews' record. The issue is Austin Matthews was almost a calendar year younger. Yeah. And the big thing to remember is that, they passed the record, but points don't tell the entire story. Obviously, Austin Matthews is one of the top 3, 4, 5 best players in the world right now. I don't think either of those guys are going to get there, but they're very good prospects. I think that entire top line probably very well could go in the top 50. And I know I've seen a few people discussing that.
All right, let's get you out of here, of course, on these questions. So back to Dmitri Simashev. So pick a number. Where does he go?
I'm going to say someone smart takes him at 17 or 18.
That would be the Montreal Canadiens or the Detroit Red Wings would grab him at 17 or 18. So
two
those
teams with 2 first-round picks.
Yep. So it makes a lot of sense there. All right. Last time I asked you, of course, we also talked about the best non-Connor Bedard player. I talked to you about a guy who's kind of rising up. So which player do you think is going to kind of get shocked and be drafted way, way too early in the first round?
Ooh, way too early. This might be a little unfair, but Colby Barlow. I think he's a guy that has a lot of offensive capabilities, but in the same way I talked about Perreault, I think Barlow's game is limited in certain ways. I think he's a very straight line guy, goes to the net, jams pucks in, but a lot of people thinking about how good his shot is and everything. There was a lot of shots that kind of hit the goalie and dribbled through and scored. And while that works great in the OHL, that's going to get stopped at the NHL level. And he's going to develop more. He's going to get physically stronger and everything. But this is also a guy who's kind of already physically matured. And I think when you're a physically mature player like that, you should be beating up on kids at the end of the day. It's one of those things where he's doing everything you want to see, but like he's doing it already kind of at that ceiling where he's at. So he's going to be an interesting player. I think he's going to be a very good player when he gets to the NHL. I just think if some team decides to take him at 7, 8, 9, they're going to be passing up a player that has a little bit, maybe has a lot more upside in going for a guy that's going to be a capable NHLer rather than an impact NHLer.
Yeah, you're going for a single when you could be trying to hit a home run there type of thing. So, 7, 8, 9. Let's see. So that would be Philly, Washington, Detroit, or St. Louis.
Philly.
Philly. That's such a Philly pick too. Where it's like, yep, he's going to be in the NHL. He's 6'1". Yeah, he's big strong boy. We're gonna pick him right there. So, Tony, our Bald King, where can the people find you?
You can find all my work at thehockeynews.com. Make sure to go to the Hockey News YouTube page and follow all my Game Tape with Tony videos where I'm interviewing players and we go over some tape together. I've done Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, Leo Carlson, and a bunch of other guys, including Will Smith and Ryan Leonard. We go over game tape together. They kind of break down their game, and it's always interesting to see their opinion of their own game and get a little bit of discussion going on that regard. And then you can follow me on Twitter at @TonyFerrari, and I have lots of stuff going on there, usually tweeting out Matthew Nye's first NHL goal and being sad about the Leafs losing in the second round.
Well, at least you get to a second round. I would kill at this point for playoff hockey. I talked to my wife the other day. I was just like, man, I miss the anxious nerves and the excitement all day leading up to it. You take it for granted after 1,000 years in a row. You kind of take it for granted. So, Tony, thank you very much. I'm sure we will talk to you again soon before the draft. And of course, we'll definitely be hanging out at the draft as well. So yeah, thanks, buddy.
Anytime, bud.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Tony Ferrari. Dmitri Simashev, man, you guys know, I said it, I'm a go score points and be awesome to on defense type of guy. But if you can get a guy who can do both, and I think Simashev, get him in the right system and get him with some better teammates, could be a guy who could be a much more offensive threat that we've seen so far in his time. But he's already has that strong foundation of being a defensive defenseman. If he can add the offensive tools, which it seems like he might be capable of, and if he's there late for the Sharks, and you could be getting a potential top pairing defenseman very late in the draft, and that late in the first round, and that feels like a steal to me. So hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Tony. Again, we'll be back tomorrow to just continue Hot Seat Week, where we'll discuss Noah Gregor. And why things, what should the Sharks do with Noah Gregor going forward? So make sure, again, you follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Download wherever you get podcasts, and of course, watch on YouTube. And until tomorrow, bye, friends.